Hello everyone, this is Senthil Palaniappan, President and CEO of Sennovate. Thank you for joining our webinar, IAM to SOC as a Service. Um, so, uh, so initially I'm going to cover some of the housekeeping items. Please feel free to ask questions anytime during this presentation, and we will address it if as appropriate, if it's relevant right away. Otherwise, all the questions will be answered in the end of the webinar. Also, please feel free to rate this webinar, and also please provide your feedback. This is important to improve our webinar in the future. And also, please let us know if you would like to see any other topic of your interest. Also, please feel free to share this webinar with your team or network, whoever might be interested and benefited out of this. So again, today is the presenters. I will be the mostly moderating, and Kamal, who is a solutions architect, over 15 years of experience in various information security aspects, DevOps, infrastructure, products, and stuff like that. He is going to be the main speaker today. So as we mentioned before, the agenda for the presentation today is we are going to be covering on why SOC. SOC is like nothing but Security Operating Center. What is it? What is the current position today? And build versus outsource. Why should you even build it, and what are the benefits, and how do you manage it, and stuff like that. And also we'll be covering how the technology has been supporting this today versus how the new generation SOC is going to be, and how maybe 2020 and beyond. Also, we'll be covering, the MSSP aspects and how the SOC as a service can help. So what is the security framework? How would you trust and build a proven approach for the digital transformation? How would you gain end-to-end protection with the security solutions? Having said that, the digital, we've been talking about digital transformation so many years now, but more and more the technology is taking over the world, and a lot of technology is coming up with the advent of the cloud. So many applications, so many ideas transformed into digital and reaching the customer, whether products or services, it's happening. If the numbers, if you see that, the number of applications increase, and number of cloud deployment increases, the number of IoT devices or personal devices that people use to do business, that is increasing. And so that opens up the world for cybersecurity, because the cybersecurity is extremely important to protect, because if you have a lot of features, you invest a lot of money in building products and features, but if your security is not right, you may not be able to use all the features, because the chief security officer come and say, hey, you cannot use these things because we are not fully secure in that area. So basically, you invest a lot of money. How do you maximize your return and then improve your efficiency to leverage technologies? That is the first aspect is how would you build your security portfolio? How would you manage it? So with having said that, these days, so because of the cloud and so many security ideas, people see the problem immediately, they jump to and build the product and throw into the cloud. Anybody can consume it. So previously, like 10, 15, 20 years, maybe Oracle, CA, IBM, so those kind of large companies. But now so many security products, everybody's building a specialized niche product in a specific area to solve a specific problem. That kind of increases so many buzzwords, so many products, so many acronyms, and constantly updating your knowledge. And not only the new features coming into the product, but also the new products coming to the market. Every product is unique, and it's kind of giving a lot of value in their own respect. And how they put all those things together as a portfolio and still get the best out of it in a cost-effective manner, At the same time, you protect your assets and then maximize your return, and also most importantly build your customer credibility protecting customer assets. Nowadays, every cloud company, they are have unknowingly they are holding their customer assets in the cloud. How would you kind of build trust with the customers by showing that your commitment to security? Having said that, I give this to Kamal, who is going to take over this to share his thoughts. Kamal, the floor is yours now.
Hey, Senthil, thanks for a quick introduction, and then thanks for opening up the floor with a nice summary. Hello, all. Thanks for joining us today. This is Kamal here. As Senthil explained, I have close to 15 years of experience working in various technologies, started with network security and then now more into DevOps and DevSecOps areas. We are solving some of the client problems by using some of the latest technology that's available in the industry, right? So as Senthil explained, we would start with what is, as we all know that some point we might have heard about what is SOC and why do we need SOC and what is the use of the SOC and all those. So we just have a quick glance, the SOC is nothing but of a facility that houses the information security team, right? So who does the monitoring, maybe analyzing of the organization security posture on day-to-day basis, right? So and then they also analyze, detect, and respond to the cyber security incidents, right? And then they would be like working around the clock mostly, and then ensuring and monitoring and analyzing the network, the server, the endpoints, the databases, applications, the various things that we have in our data center, that the applications, the websites and other systems, right? It could be as simple as our internal and external systems as well. So that's the kind of a role that the SOC has been doing till today, and then there has been various changes in the SOC have been operating starting from 13 years back and today, right? So we're going to discuss and kind of walk you through all those things. Senthil, could you help me with the next slide, please? Yeah. And then, so why do we need a SOC? Now that we know what is a SOC, and then why do we need the SOC, right? So we all agree that SOC is help us in achieving. So what basically SOC is that it will help us identify the attacks and remediating them at a greater speed before it causes more damages, right? So that's the main reason we need to have the SOC, right? So we need to identify the threats and then remediate them as soon as possible before it creates a huge damage, right? And that's the main advantage, and that's why we need the SOC, right? And then it will also help us to meet the regulations that requires the normal regulation that's been imposed by the government and things like that, right? We call it as a PCI for the credit cards and all the stuff, right? So some of the other areas that's been outlined here, why do we need the SOC? And also, right, so for example, we talked about digital transformation, where public cloud, hybrid cloud, and all those areas where we exposing ourselves, the critical data of our customers and our applications, and then into the public cloud, where it's even secured. They do have military grade security systems, but it's our responsibility to kind of protect our applications, our customer data in the cloud as well, right? So moving on to the next slide, where we talk about, at some point as of today, most of us would have a SOC or at least a NOC. We call it as like SOC is an kind of similar, enhancement of NOC, where in the network operating center, where we might have some firewalls, we might have HAPS, NIPS, spam, IAM, and things like that. So which is kind of a very basic, right? So that's we call it as a SOC or some small and medium consumers, right? I mean, they consider that's all the security is about, right? So we have a firewall, and then we got protected. We have a VPN, we have password management systems, IAM, spams, and things like that. So, I mean, for the small scale industries or small scale consumers or medium scale consumers, so they are more oriented on those areas. Whereas when it comes to enterprise and large corporates, where we need to have a complete 360 degree of our infrastructure. I mean, we need to have more than what normally people consider as a SOC, right? So, and this slide talks about the same thing, right? What do we have today? Something very similar, which most of us might have. And how do we get to the next level of the SOC, which is the SOC 2020 that we're going to talk about, or the next gen SOC that's dominating, that's being the buzzword of the industry today. Right. So how are we going to get there? So we have two options. One, we could build ourselves. Say, for example, hire some of the top-notch security analysts and people, and then kind of build our own, and then build a process around it, and then buying the technology that's needed and all those stuff. Right. So we could build entire SOC or the next gen SOC by ourselves. And the alternate option is to kind of outsource it to an MSSP, right? So the advantages over there, right? So for example, and when it comes to outsourcing, we have multiple options as well, right? So should I outsource only the people part of it and then own the technology portion of it, or should I do a partial and mixed, or should I do kind of a full outsource and all this stuff, right? So we do have multiple options, and then what an MSP can do for me, and what I can control for my organization, right? So there are various options that's available when it comes to kind of building a next gen SOC, right? We're gonna go in detail in terms of like what our model is, and then what our conclusion or the recommendation is as we move forward, right? So that's about building or kind of getting somebody else to do the work for you, right? And then we talked about the SOC, today's SOC versus the next gen SOC, right? So the today's SOC is like completely focused towards people, right? So where we have people monitoring the systems 24/7, sets of monitors, like few tens and few hundreds and 50 to 100 of monitors, and different type of teams monitoring different tools and kind of managing everything. It's more of a people centric, right? That's what the today's SOC is all about, right? Whereas the next gen SOC that we're talking about is an AML centric, right? Which is completely based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and it has helped our human team to kind of work together with the machine so that we kind of identify the threats and then kind of protect it before it damages further, right? So that's kind of a next gen technology, or we proactively kind of protect the threat, right? That's where we get into the next gen. So there are certain things that being considered as the core for the next gen SOC, right? Which is completely the similar of what we have it in today's SOC, but the major advantages are like we have evolved or we have improved some of those traditional SOC capabilities, which is the threat visibility maybe, or kind of getting invisibility to the new or unknown attacks, which is like go beyond what we have defined in our logs or rules. Maybe use the artificial intelligence and machine learning to identify new and unknown attacks, whereas in a traditional SOC we go with the traditional rules and configurations that's been parked and programmed, right? And then we also have active defense systems in our Next Gen SOC, where we use intelligence, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to make decisions and arrest before it's damages, right? So they could be like the proactive, um, and then like we kind of hunt and respond is same thing that we discussed earlier and things like that. And then we have next gen um, teams that's available. So when I say like the next gen, which means like the people who could understand the AI and ML centric tools and softwares that's been used, and then they can work along with those tools and get the 360 degree of our next level protection, right? And then we also have, when it comes to the AI ML, so we normally kind of model our next gen SOC based on some of the tools that's available, say for example, be it the SIM or a SOAR, kind of the tools and standards that we kind of implement to make sure we collect the data from different sources and then analyze them and then take preventive or proactive protection, right? So what does the SOC of 2020 looks like, right? So it's, as I explained earlier, the next gen SOC basically prevent breaches from happening, right? Even before it's been impacted. It prevents by leveraging the big data and the supercomputing capabilities that's part of our next gen SOC capabilities, right? And then it also has the solutions that we discussed earlier, which is like SIMs or based solutions, which could analyze large sets of data more effectively rather than a human being going through hundreds of logs and machine logs, database logs, application logs, and everything. Whereas this being an automated solution, it could analyze large data sets and effectively identify the threats and attacks using the machine learning. And then it doesn't mean that since it can analyze the logs and replace and kind of identify the threat, it doesn't mean that it's going to completely replace and completely does automation of our existing security analysts, but it's going to be, the decisions are, it's going to be an aid for our security analyst to make sure we kind of arrest the threat before it spreads and things like that. So it's going to be a kind of aid for our security analyst team to take proper actions, right? And then we have different models that's available for the next gen SOC that we talked about, depending upon your requirements, where you have hosted, be it the on-premise or cloud or hybrid. So we do have different types of solutions and services that's available. It's not like one shirt fits for everywhere, right? So it's the same concept. So we're going to have different set of tool sets and different sets of frameworks that's available to meet our next gen 2020 SOC that's designed for future, right? And as I mentioned earlier, it's completely based out of the artificial intelligence and machine learning, where we collect data from different sources and proactively take actions against them, or use even machine learning and artificial intelligence to automatically remediate that. And then this slide talks about a quick summary of a difference between today's SOC versus next gen SOC. I mean, these are some of the topics that we discussed earlier. This is in regards to the same that we discussed earlier, where the today's SOC is more about detect and react, whereas the next gen is about like you kind of anticipate, you kind of use AI and ML to kind of identify and take the action before even it is detected or before even it is impacting, creating a damage for us and kind of stuff. So this slide we have discussed it somewhat in in a high level. Yeah, and then it also has some details and references about supporting with our international agencies and supporting with our government policies and things like that. Make sure we are compliant and we also aid them in our overall to stay kind of compliant, right? Moving on to the next slide, what do we have in the framework, right? So in Sennovate, we kind of follow a framework called Zero Trust Security Framework. So which means we do not trust anything. We kind of trust our systems. We don't let anybody. This is the framework based on our partners, some of the partners that we work. So we kind of take the framework, stitch it along with our products and services, and then we kind of bundle them together. So the Zero Trust Security Framework is completely a 360-degree framework which does provide the security for all the aspects that we talked about, starting from your endpoint to your data center or the public cloud or a hybrid cloud or private cloud, touching upon all the areas, the websites, the web servers, the applications, the HIPS, NIPS, and all the areas. So we kind of go through each and every device that's been induced or each and every touch points, we could call it as, and that would be covered by our security framework. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have different tool sets that's available depending upon the area of workload or where the systems are hosted and things like that. And in this next slide, we're going to talk about how do we approach or how do we secure systems that's been designed for next gen digital transformation, right? So we're going to have something called as you know, like so as the digital transformation is kind of a buzzword today, right? So there are so many technology changes that's been happening, be it be like public cloud and DevOps, DevSecOps, and things like artificial intelligence, big data analytics, and all those things being kind of putting more pressure on our infrastructure or putting more pressure to our CIOs and CTOs on the top leads to embrace those technologies so that we can give business benefit and also be that and increase our time to market, right? So that we can beat our competitors and be kind of. So coming to this, what we have here is like this slide will help us where talks about how we protect. We, as I said earlier, we cover a 360-degree protection, so which means we protect, we detect, and then we respond. And then we also kind of does that by using our 360-degree or a zero trust framework that we kind of create using the softwares and technologies that's been around. Yeah. And moving on to the next slide, this slide talks about our services that we have that will help you kind of embrace and provide the 360-degree security solutions, right? So we do have two levels of services or two types of services. One is the security advisory services and then the managed security services. Both provides, as you see in the slide, would provide the benefits like the security advisory services would help you improve or where we do consulting, kind of come to your premises or kind of touch base with your people do an interview, set of questionnaires, run through the questionnaires, install our softwares, scanning your network and things like that. So where we do kind of a certain framework that's available, and then the certain package that's available where we follow the model to make sure we help you to reach your digital transformation goals, right? In the managed, we kind of after our consulting is being done, and we kind of provide the reports, and we kind of work together in mitigating the risks or the gaps that's been identified during our consultation process. We kind of take that up, get it deployed for you, and support and manage it by us. So that's what we do in the managed security services. And if you have any services, say for example, as I mentioned earlier, the basic security services like today IAM, PAM, and VPN and firewall and things like that, so it could be bundled along with that and taken up further. So these are the different services that we have, the security advisory services and managed security services. And then, for example, the other advantage of security advisory services is that so our team can work along with your team, be the part of your team, and help you guide through and achieve your digital transformation goals, right? So that option is also available. And then moving on to the next slide, where I'm gonna hand over to Mr. Senthil to kind of summarize and then take it forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kamal, for sharing your thoughts on this area. It's a very complex area, and thanks for addressing in a broader spectrum to have a overall understanding of this topic. And so basically the takeaway here is that the security is extremely complex, and updates and then introduction of new products coming up every day that makes it even more complex. New buzzwords every day. So building up fully internal SOC is the best thing. It is a luxury, but that's going to be way too expensive because you need to run a big large security team which has all the expertise within the security framework and will be utilized only for your environment. So that the biggest challenge with that is after some time, if no particular scenario has been used, then the internal talent become rusty. So basically, any organization invests a lot of money and resources and various technologies to build their own domain, their core business focus. And because of the security threat, and then maybe sometimes you may not be able to use that and get the fullest return on your investment. So if you don't have that is a big challenge. So what are the options we got, right? So we have build it internally. Like I said, that is the ideal way to do internally. If you have all the resources, that is the ideal thing. But it has resources. How do you build it? How do you make it more efficient, cost effective? Those are the challenges going to be there. And if SOC as a service, in other sense, they're constantly been handling various customer threats, so they've been constantly equipped. They are very sharp and knowledgeable to address any kind of scenario. And one of the challenge from the customer point of view is how would you build accountability to this model, and how do you get the best out of them? So that is the one challenge. But overall, these days, with the global competition, whether your organization is big or small doesn't matter. We are competing for the same customer. So having said that, we need to win the customer confidence. So only way to build the customer confidence is show that how secure your environment is, how well you protect the customer data. In order to demonstrate, I think this is one of the key items that has to be in the checklist to kind of take it further. So having said that, the overall the SOC officers investing in security products from IAM to all the way to threat detection, network security, and all those areas. Then how would you get best out of it? By monitoring it properly and also extend that to protect your digital assets is the key. That concludes this topic, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I have few questions here I would like to kind of address. One of the questions is like how DevOps and SOC can coexist. Kamal, do you want to take that question? Kamal, are you there?
Sorry, yeah. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now. Sorry. So basically, one of the
awesome.
audience is asking is like how DevOps and SOC can coexist.
Oh yeah, sure, definitely I can take that up. Sure, yeah. So yeah, definitely DevOps and SOC can coexist, right? So when we talk about the DevOps could be a pretty simple development to production framework where the team would be focusing only on the release cycle, or how do we get our software to the market quickly and fastly, right? So that's purely on the application delivery, right? Where they do not focus much on the security, right? When we introduce the security principles and guidelines into the DevOps cycle, earlier we had like SDLC and waterfall and all those. Now that we have the DevOps model where we introduce the security in the development itself, because as per the research and as per the reviews that's been done or the investigations that's been done by various industries like IBM and things like that. As you might know, DevOps was initially coined by IBM and other companies, right? So where so they found fixing and vulnerability or fixing and security issue is cost less, way more being getting fixed it after it's released to the production. So it's, yes, they both can work together. That's when we have this DevSecOps, which has the security component inbuilt into our DevOps framework, where we introduce the vulnerability management, things like vulnerability management and your identity management and the whole framework that we talked about, like SIM, SOAR, and the anti-air frameworks that's been available. Those are embedded in the development cycle itself. So yes, the both can work together, and this will be a good approach to make sure the releases that you do is the best one, right? Doesn't have any threats, doesn't have any vulnerabilities and things like that. We do have real-time fixing and monitoring of vulnerabilities and issues. Say, for example, softwares like Veracode, Qualys, and other things, they do kind of let real-time monitoring and remediation of vulnerabilities and security threats, be in your application layers. When I say the application layer, we do have softwares like Veracode and some of the open sources that could help you there. On the infra and the platform layer, you could definitely use softwares like Qualys and other things for your.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kamal. I think to add to that point, DevOps, DevSecOps products, basically the idea here is that SOC is kind of identifying your vulnerability, and you build that to identify vulnerability, kind of protect in the process, so it's kind of protected, and you don't have to worry about it because it is already put into the process, put into the system of operations. Okay, so we go to the next question. How risky it is to automate remediation using artificial intelligence or machine learning? Maybe I take this first, and we can will add to this later on. This is the thing is nothing like risky, but yeah, what is machine learning or AI? What this ML framework does is it tried to learn. One time it happens, next time it knows what to do. That's kind of a thing. So basically, like you cannot that to expect to do anything, everything on its own. Any new scenario comes, of course, like we may have to have the intervention, but most of the things, like once it happens, we know what to do. And next time the scenario happens, the engine is smart enough to understand and get the context. Most importantly, it is not the traditional mechanism, right? If it comes, it's scripted, triggers some jobs and runs, not like that. It basically understands the context of what is happening and then try to address it pretty much like from the human sense. So it is depending on, it's not like 100% rely on that, and of course there will be, but most commonly common scenarios with the various different contexts that AL or MI framework can handle it. Then it's a good thing about this, constantly learning about new information, and then act accordingly. So it is like Kamal earlier said, it is a human machine collaboration. Okay, that's about that one. If one more, the last question that from other audience is like, can SOC as a service implemented in my infrastructure if it is spread across on-prem or various clouds like Amazon or any other cloud infrastructure, infrastructure as a service? Kamal, do you want to take this one?
Yep, Senthil, sure, definitely, yeah. As we outlined earlier, right, SOC is platform independent, right? So it's more of a framework, it's more of the tool set, it's more of the policies, process, and people and technology, right? This can be implemented anywhere, be it be public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, I'm talking about. So we can do the kind of controls all all the way, like top down and the east west, all those possible. This is completely doable, and we have tool sets and frameworks that's available to do that. Yeah, this is doable as well. And we do have, say, for example, these days, some of the softwares that I mentioned earlier, they do have those same softwares available in public cloud. So, for example, to quote a few, Veracode, for example, College, for example, and Senthil, for example. So those are the same solutions that is available for on-prem as well as public cloud like Amazon, Azure. They do have it available in their marketplace and their store, so they can be deployed and integrated with our on-premise system to provide the complete protection and the complete defense system for our entire landscape. Yep.
Thank you, Kamal. I think to add to that point, yep, it's the legacy or any system, cloud, SaaS. Nowadays, like Kamal mentioned, it is available. It is basically having the right knowledge to integrate, and some of the things. Now you have agent-based or agentless, both systems are available. So depending on your needs, your network requirements, and then your network infrastructure, we should be able to use the right method to do that. Most of the vendors these days, they support both, so whether agent or agentless. So that really very powerful to kind of meet any kind of situation to build it optimally. Having said that, that ends this wonderful topic today, and thank you everyone for joining this presentation, IAM and to SOC as a service. And if you have any other questions, feel free to feel free to send. You have contact information in this slide, so you feel free to send me an email or reach out to us, and we are more than happy to address your needs. Again, wherever you are in the world, thank you for attending this, and we will meet in the next webinar. Thank you.